Welcome along to this vlog in which I'm going to basically talk rubbish that comes out of my head for the next 10 or 15 minutes or so. So where we are is on the main highway just north of Wellington, New Zealand, on an April afternoon. April, of course, being autumn in this part of the world, and I am actually feeling the cold a little bit here. I'm still wearing my summer gear and I'm kind of wishing I didn't. But the purpose of this ride is to travel along a new piece of highway that's opened up here in the last couple or 3 weeks. That's actually been in the making since 2014. And that is a section of the main highway north of Wellington that reaches north to the rest of the country, connects Wellington to the rest of the country, appropriately named State Highway 1. And we're on an old part of State Highway 1 at the moment, and we're about to detour off to the new State Highway 1. Prior to the opening of the new road, we would have gone down the old highway, and that was a single lane in either direction highway that meandered along the coast and through some coastal towns, and was subject to problems because of increasing traffic volume. And it meant that long delays getting in and out of Wellington were quite usual. As long ago as 1929, the road we're about to go on to was first suggested. And this road is essentially an inland highway that cuts through some fairly steep and rugged hilly or mountainous terrain to connect the highway north of Wellington into Wellington through a 4-lane motorway. It's been built at the cost of well over $1 billion. I think it's like $1.4 billion. Or something like that, an enormous amount of money. And as you go through this road, you can actually see where that money all went. So here we go, we're just starting onto the new part of road now. So this road's actually got several names. The name that everybody knows it by is Transmission Gully. And the reason it's called Transmission Gully is because the road loosely follows a gully through which some power transmission lines have been placed. So nothing more imaginative than that. Another name that's been given to this road is Te Aranui o Te Rangihaiata. And literally translated, so that's in the Maori language of New Zealand, and literally translated, it means the great path of Te Rangihaiata. So Te Rangihaiata was, as I understand it, he was the son of a chief of a fairly notorious tribe in the 19th century, and at some point or another he lost in a battle and he retreated, and this was the path, the inland path, which he used to retreat. So whether or not that's a legend or whether that's true is unknown, but that's a name that's been given to it anyway. My name that I've given this road is simply the $1 billion highway. And I have elected not to crop out my speedometer on this road. So I'm going to have to remain honest and keep to the speed limit, which, given what I'm riding, is going to be a little bit tricky, but I'll do what I can. So the speed limit on this road is 100 kilometers per hour, and I'm on a Suzuki Bandit 1250, the 2007 model, the one the year before they added ABS to it. This is one of the more heavily policed pieces of road in the country, simply because it's new and it's quite steep in places, and so there's an opportunity to make some quite good revenue from speeding tickets from people speeding up unintentionally on the long downhill stretches. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean revenue, I meant some good opportunity to educate people about road safety. Sorry, I didn't mean to say the revenue word out loud there. Anyway, so here we are going down one of the downhill stretches now, and the speed in the bottom right hand side of the picture that you can see is the speed that the GPS on my bike is reading. And I'll be trying to keep that as legal as I can over the next 20 or so kilometers of road. So this piece of road is 27 kilometers long, or around 17 miles from one end to the other, and it's a 4-lane motorway like this all the way, but sometimes you get 6 lanes, particularly if there's a long uphill stretch. So there's a lane for the slower vehicles to use and not hold people up. So it cuts through some fairly rugged, hilly terrain north of the city. We're actually up quite high here as well, and it's quite exposed out here. It's quite windy. I would imagine that it's going to get quite cold here over winter, so winter gear for riding is a definite necessity if you're going to ride on this road in winter time. If you look at the construction and you look at the huge amount of earthworks that they've had to do to get this road done, you can see where that $1 billion went. Now, this is actually a bit of a novelty for us here in New Zealand, because as a country of only 5 million people, it's unusual for us to have public works of this scale undertaken, civil engineering project. So there was a lot of hype and a lot of anticipation about the opening of this road. And unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, the road was originally, well, it was started in 2014, and the intention was for it to be open at the end of 2019. So the expectation was that it was going to be a 5-year build. But unfortunately, a few things got in the way of that, and the opening of the road was delayed until March 2022. So, first of all, shortly after they started constructing the road, there was a fairly major earthquake that happened. Now, the road's been engineered to withstand large earthquakes and floods and other events, but that notwithstanding, it did actually set them back a little bit in the project. The next thing that happened was that not long following that earthquake, there was some very severe flooding. Again, that delayed the project because the ground was so wet that they couldn't do the roading and ground preparation work for a while that they needed to. It did highlight another problem with this project, and that is of drainage. And you can see, maybe I can just move over a little bit surreptitiously, maybe you can see off the side of the road there's deep drainage channels on either side of the road here. So the rainwater that hits the road contaminated as it will be with bits of rubber from tyres and all that other stuff, has to run off and be dealt with in a controlled way. And that's necessary because there's actually a protected nature reserve wetland not far from here. And one thing we don't want is for silt and tyre rubber and all sorts of other road grime to end up in that protected waterway. So that caused a delay to the project as well. Then, of course, there was the COVID pandemic, and a lot of the workers that were working on this road had actually come in from Australia, I believe. And so when the first lockdown started happening in 2020, they all shot back home, and we couldn't get them back for several months. So that delayed the project as well. And then the next thing that happened was just simply bad management. The road was constructed using a partnership of government-funded public money and private sector, so a public-private partnership. And this is the first real major project undertaken in New Zealand using that model. And there was quite a bit of blame throwing and buck passing and governance vacuum issues. That meant that certain decisions that were supposed to have been taken and certain actions that were supposed to have been done weren't, and there were very long delays in getting them done, to the point where the road opened in March 2022 and there is still no cell phone coverage along much of it, nor in fact is there coverage for the police radio system either. So large black spots then, not only for civilians but for police as well. And the mobile phone operators have had to resort to putting temporary mobile phone on private mobile phone masts and hardware on private land in order to get some coverage along this road until such time as they can actually set up the coverage properly. So the execution of this project has actually been a bit of a joke, and because the anticipation for opening this road was high, it meant that there was an awful lot of discussions and chatter on social media, none of it particularly complimentary towards those in charge of the project, until such time as the road opened. And then people started to ride or drive on the road and discovered that it's actually an amazing piece of engineering and a really nice road to use. So that's our new motorway. We're all very excited about it. I'm going to be getting off it at the next exit here, which is just looming up in the distance, because we're going to be missing the last 5 kilometers or so of it. But you've been along the northern stretch of Transmission Gully anyway. Last time I did this stretch of road was on a Suzuki Hayabusa, which, for those who don't know, is and always will be the fastest production motorcycle in the world. Well, fastest in terms of top speed, because after they made it, governments of the world decided to arbitrarily limit the top speed that motorcycles could do. So consequently, the Suzuki Hayabusa is and always will be the king of the highest speed. So I was on one of those last time I did this road. Anyway, we've exited off the motorway now, and we're about to take a little link road which leads into the neighbourhood where I live, which is just about 500 or 600 metres off the end of this little link road. Anyway, I hope I didn't bore you too much with my discussion of Transmission Gully. I will leave you now to enjoy the rest of your day.